Not really. Wilds never really had one to begin with, though this is a good step, and I do like the update. G'day folks, it's Michael. Welcome back. It's been a little while. Sorry about that. Hope you're all doing well. I feel like I'm a little bit late to the party here, and a lot of other cool people already made some great videos talking about the new update for Wilds. But I figure, hey, why not jump in here, have a bit of fun, and just follow up on my previous video with a little DLC or something, you know? This is a great opportunity just quickly as well to just say thank you, truly, for all of the support on that video. And just my channel in general as just a smaller guy who's just starting out. I'm a very unassuming person, and I often think to myself, who the hell is even going to be interested in listening to me while I've been working on stuff for the channel so far? So it's humbling to get a big response on a video like that, truly. It's made me a bit more confident as well to even do something like this and make a video on my thoughts when there are already a ton of other very talented and entertaining folks out there making videos and discussing this stuff in detail. I definitely knew that I wanted to make something about the update, but I also wanted to give it a few play sessions, just a bit of time to just give a more measured response on the update and the endgame changes without rushing in, and when I actually had something to say and some thoughts. Even in a 2-hour long video, I made a lot of little mistakes and missed so much, so it always feels like you can never get something completely right. This video is not going to be 2 hours long. I felt it would be nice, you know, as a change of pace to just voice some thoughts in a more chill format with some notes and some light editing. I was originally thinking of having some other cool Monster Hunter talking heads involved in this video as well, but I think I might plan some of those top secret projects for a later time, so keep your eyes peeled for those. In the meantime, you were just going to be stuck listening to me, and McNamalo's here chilling out as well. One of the reasons that I wanted to give this video more time was to actually see if the proof was in the pudding in regards to the retention, the effect on the player base, and if folks are actually playing the game because of this update. It has now been a week since the update dropped as I'm recording this, and have a look at this. More people were playing today, a week after what wasn't even a full title update, than how many people were playing a week after Title Update 2 came out. Pretty interesting stuff, right? And I talked about this in my previous video, and I'll get into a bit more detail on it shortly, but I thought this was really worth waiting to see and talk about it, because I have maintained that systems and mechanics like this are really important for the longevity within these games, especially if the main content drops are going to be continued to be drip fed with new gen. We'll have to see what the data says as time goes by, but I'm glad I waited to see this and see a bit of evidence that my own bizarre theories actually do hold some water. You know, if a major update that has Laggy and Steve in it loses more players within a week of that update coming out, and then this smaller update has brought that count back up to, you know, a higher number after the same amount of time, that is definitely pretty instructive, I think. Righto, so actually talking about the update itself here, I just want to start off quickly with just breezing through a couple of smaller thoughts on some of the other changes aside from just the endgame stuff. If you're here for the endgame aficionados take on the meat and potatoes here, please feel free to skip forward if you'd like. So there have been a lot of buffs for pretty much all of the weapons. I'm not going to go through all of them here because you guys can all read. I am not super dialed in on a lot of the weapons in Wilds, but from a more casual perspective, it seems to me as though they're making some more granular changes in pursuit of kind of raising the floor for the majority of players while also tidying up a bit of frustration for some of the more hardcore players or speedrunners. A lot of folks are talking about the delay on EI for Longsword being frustrating. Lance and Greatsword both had a lot of changes to make the kit play more smoothly. IG got some big changes as well. And as for raising the floor, you know, easing the timing on offsets and how much buildup they inflict for switch axe is nice to see, though a lot of people still aren't too happy with the weapon being FRS City. Though, you know, a number of other things like DBs getting slightly extended window on perfect evade, you know, it's just nice. Those more precise actions, they're still going to need you to be locked in during combat, and the changes, I think they're just going to make things feel a bit more consistent. I don't think anyone is actually sitting here hear, you know, saying that these changes are going to further trivialize the game or anything like that. You know, people have been getting cooked routinely, especially with 9-star monsters. Even with 8-star monsters, a lot of people were struggling. I was playing a bit of multiplayer and a lot of carts were happening pretty regularly, I will say. I thought that a lot of the 8-stars were already in a pretty good place after Title Update 2, and although things have been dialed up even more now, some of the smaller buffs and changes to the weapons, you know, are going to equalize things a little bit. Of course, in addition to the small amount of power creep that is now possible from the new talismans as well. I guess that's as good of a segue as any into touching on the big scary D word, the difficulty. So I think most of the new changes have quelled a lot of the discourse from a lot of folks saying that the game is too easy. I was there on launch as someone saying as much, and a lot has obviously changed, and I'm a lot happier with things as they are now. Tempered Arcveld was unchanged when 8-star apexes were added, and I still maintain that on launch, it was getting rolled too easily for how important it was as the best target within the endgame. Now, it has 18,000 more HP. Among many other changes, and since the Akuma update, especially now with 9 stars, it is no longer the sole target within the end game that, you know, everyone is just blasting through for rewards, which is great to see. I think it's pretty fair to say, especially now with 9 stars, that Wilds is now right up there in the upper echelon of base game difficulty. You know, 8-star gore was already pretty insane, and the title update monsters especially are very intimidating. The Apexes and Arcveld, they're a little bit less threatening in my opinion, but that might just be more because of the movesets and how those title update monsters are tuned with, you know, being title update content and being a bit more, you know, catered and designed towards being more difficult at a baseline, you know, with their placement within the game, if that makes sense. So yeah, these are some pretty beefy hunt times on a lot of these investigations now. And I also just want to make a correction on my previous video that I got in a comment where I said that monsters and multi-monster quests have their HP scaled down. That is the case with optionals, but not with investigations. So that was a bit of misinfo on my part, so apologies for that. And I've made a note in the description. Thank you again to It's the Quenchiest 5072 for pointing that out. Very much appreciate it. So yeah, the whole difficulty discussion has been fascinating to watch so far, and I think things are in a much better place now, at least within the endgame of Wilds, as opposed to launch. It's obviously a much more complicated discussion if you're talking about different points throughout the core progression, but within the endgame, sheesh, man. Like, I am not going to die on that hill that I was on at launch with Arcveld and 7-star Apexes, because things have obviously changed for the better since then. Now, the conversation may even flip the other way with people saying that the difficulty is too insane and quests are taking too long, etc., etc. You can insert that "Is this what you wanted?" meme from Marquez Brownlee, because all I will say is careful what you wish for. I'm here for it. I was one of the folks that was critical of how things were, but I am glad to report that things are harder now. And I've been enjoying where things are at with this update in relation to what the hunter has at their disposal in Wilds, and a lot of the more recent changes with the weapon moveset balancing as well. So the rewards and the talismans, what do I think about all of that? Well, first off, the community response, not just my opinion, but the community response to the update has been pretty positive from what I've seen, and that is interesting because my own words have been ringing in my ears while playing. You know,
RNG and repetition are not points of negativity. They can either be used well or not well, like most things. The question is, how are these games being designed and incorporating repetition and RNG in a positive and engaging way?
I think the whole stigma around RNG being a bit of a boogeyman term within the Monster Hunter community has been shaken, maybe, a little bit. With this update, you know? Because yes, the talismans are an RNG-based reward, and the RNG is pretty heavy, mind you, and yet people are seemingly pretty happy with what is on offer here and the effect that these rewards are having on the gameplay. So what are the effects that are being had on gameplay in regards to the actual incentive to play? Well, as someone that has only come back to the game for the content drops, I have been pretty vocal about wanting a more engaging experience between title updates with the approach to content drops starting from new gen. I don't even mind so much if the game is unfinished in certain areas and they are going to keep leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for players to keep coming back to the game if there is an engaging system that can keep folks playing regardless. In an ideal world, all of the things that we've all talked about regarding cut or delayed content and drip feeding and title updates wouldn't be an issue, but I'd be a lot happier to keep playing with what is on offer and what they have time to implement if there is something that can grab me and that cycle or grind is there, you know? Ideally, something like this would have been present as well from the get-go with Wilds to help mitigate the loss of players after launch and the drip feeding and the retention, etc. But hey, here we are 6 months after launch with an addition that, on its surface, is a pretty small in-game addition. And look how it's been received, right? This is what we need more of with Monster Hunter, especially in these base game releases. You know, a clever way to reuse the roster and keep the Monster Hunter gameplay sustained for a bit longer. I have and will continue to play this update, hunting 9-star monsters, where previously I have only come back and played the game for few play sessions since launch with the content drops. It's all well and good to bolster the core progression with title update monsters, but something I said in my previous video is that I don't think simply adding more content in the form of monsters has often moved the needle for a sustained period of time in regards to player retention, where, you know, there are other important factors like Endgame that are influencing whether people are playing or not. And we are definitely seeing some evidence of that being the case with this update. So there is now a lot more build crafting that can be done as a result of these new talismans now, which is great. Craftable charms are still very good, if not better in a lot of cases, which is also nice to see. If you are using a random talisman versus a craftable one, you are going to need to source those points of Wex, Agi, and Burst that you had before through your armor now. So there is definitely going to be some side grading and a lot of pretty incremental improvements to a lot of builds that were already established, which is a good thing. You know, I don't think the amount of power creep that we are going to get from these talismans is going to be that big. I've seen that term side grading used a lot by certain smart folks in the community on this subject, and I think that is a good way to describe the effect on build crafting. Yes, we are going to be seeing some flat out upgrades depending on what you roll, but it's not to an insane degree where it's easy to get random talismans that completely invalidate craftable talismans straight away, you know? With the more favorable talismans, I think the biggest effect is going to come in the form of buffing or supplementing craftable weapons that kind of struggled to max out important skills in comparison to Arshan. That is more of an indictment on Arshan probably, with the customization system and 333 slots coming at the expense of customization for monster craftable weapons with the fewer slots and in some cases undesirable skills. Zune actually made a great video talking about this, so go and give his video a watch, but I will say that I don't think it was really a big issue within the skill system itself of not being able to run craftable weapons before the update. You know, with everything that had 3-2-1, basically that meant you could have 3 skills each at level 3 when taking the inbuilt skill into account, as opposed to Arshan, which could have 4 with the right decorations. Most folks were running very similar armor set variations, using Agi, Wex, or Burst Talisman, and then just setting up their weapons with whatever skills they needed for that weapon. I think that is mostly still going to be the case, just with the skills shuffled around to get those armor skills up to the desired level while squeezing a little bit more out of the weapon, you know, offensive skills with what's possible now. And like I said, I think things were fine before, and that the levels of skills we were already using or wanting to use are just going to be able to be raised a little bit higher now, which is good. The Arshan system still presents its own issues, as I spoke about in my previous video, and I think some of the collateral damage done by that system is now going to be mitigated to some degree by these new talismans. Since the Arshan weapon's biggest advantage was on slots, that is now going to be, you know, minimized to some degree. Yes, the Arshan weapons are still going to benefit from the talismans. I just don't think as much as weapons that weren't quite able to get what they wanted or needed up to max level skill-wise to be as competitive as Ashen weapons, if that makes sense. Even having just some complementary like support skills on top of what we were already using feels very rewarding at this stage of the game, and that progression is definitely something that I look for at an endgame level. That was something that I talked about with Sunbreak and Curio augmentation in my previous video as well, where, you know, it still felt good to just roll additional slots or even smaller support skills on armor without hitting godly RNG. That felt very nice and very incremental. Now, I do want to just say that I don't think RNG decos, the Ashen system, or even this talisman system are great endgame activities or systems on their own in Wilds. But I will say the fact that there are now 3 different avenues to go down, the trifecta of RNG, that is a good thing. Similar to Iceborne with, you know, having both the Guiding Lands and Tempered Investigations as options that attempt to cater to different sorts of players, even though those 2 systems, not amazing on their own. Even though these 3 systems in Wilds are all pretty uninspired and shallow in my opinion, having more things to do in a game that was struggling to keep people engaged is a W that I will take, even though this update and Wilds as a whole still doesn't hold a candle to having an actual endgame system like Guild Quests or Anomaly. I will say that I think this talisman system is an improvement from base Rise, where you were just melding any mats down and refreshing cycles. I much prefer getting rewarded with chase items from actually hunting as the main incentive to play. Though Rise did do something with its melding that I'll talk about shortly, I would much prefer one robust system like Guild Quests or Anomaly rather than what we have in this instance, where we have multiple smaller, shallower systems to kind of jump between, and with a huge reliance on melding as well. And like I said in my previous video, MH4 showed that this was possible in a base game over 10 years ago, and they carried that through to 4 Ultimate and built it up further. You know, it is kind of sad that we are sitting here praising an addition to a game 6 months on, when a much older game handled this situation way better ages ago. Even Sunbreak had the Anomaly system added with its first title update a month after the game came out. Again, my main critique of Wilds since release has been in regards to the lack of improvement in a lot of areas, like Endgame, from previous titles. I am praising this update, but I also want to be fair, and I don't want to let these jokers off the hook after this one addition. This is a good change, but the bar was super low after Base World, and they barely cleared that with Wilds on launch in my opinion. And only now, after 6 months, are we getting something that caters towards improving a very important aspect of the game that wasn't in a bad state with other titles. A lot of the more negative effects stemming from a really lacking endgame could have been avoided, and this update shouldn't have been as necessary as it was since launch. Sorry, a little bit of dooming and crashing out there, but I guess that can lead me into some changes that I would like to see with the system and some ideas on the subject of missed opportunities. Wreck-It Rye already made a great video talking about Hunter Symbol 3s not being rewarded from 9-star monsters, which is just bizarre because 7 and 8-star monsters were already offering them. Resting is still having a pretty negative effect on the game, and I really don't know how to solve that with how investigations in Wilds and the open world have been designed. If there was some sort of way to find and level a quest, like Anomaly or Guild Quests, that would be great of course, but that is probably just wishful thinking at this point. I'm not sure which is worse, spamming rest at the tent or sitting in a bush in Nergigante's area for 40 minutes and then picking up all the tracks for investigations. One thing I will say is that you were able to get investigations in World by breaking parts, even though tracking is not a thing anymore. Maybe breaking parts or landing traps or boulders or breaking wounds or something could be a way to acquire investigations through actually hunting, you know? You already get materials through this same method, so why not have it be that investigations of the same difficulty tier can be found this way? I don't know. Resting still feels pretty awful, and although World and Iceborne had a similar issue, there have already been certain ideas and mechanics that already exist that could definitely alleviate the need to rest over and over again for quests to run. The one thing that I alluded to with Rise, and something its melding system did actually introduce, was the ability to somewhat determine or influence the results. and that was with moonbow melding, something that I didn't mention in my previous video. Though most folks ran Whispered Mystery and Rebirth anyway because of the way that system worked, I think that idea could have been involved in some way here. It doesn't even need to be a mechanic exclusive to melding. You know, you could have a weighting toward certain monsters rewarding talismans or variants of glowing stones that favor different skills. That might have been a way to also use more of the roster, you know, not just having apexes and flagships drop talismans, but by having some of the tier 1 and tier 2 monsters drop corresponding skills on those talismans, for example. Something that I've talked about quite a bit is the importance of target farming and how that can really play a big role in an in-game system and how players are engaging within the roster of these games. It was something that Guild Quests and Anomaly both did very well, and that concept of target farming for certain in-game items and materials has really been a big problem within WoW so far, in my opinion. There are always ways of using RNG in a smarter way to create a more positive experience and to keep these games especially more engaging. And I think there are so many ways in which this system could have had more determinate rewards and more target farming while still having a good amount of staying power with a certain level of RNG. The HR cap was also probably not necessary, and the talisman rarities especially could have been reworked into the lower tier monster rewards. Like I just said, Rarity 5 and Rarity 6 talismans could have had their own appraisal items at a lower tier that could have been rewarded from 6, 7, or 8 star monsters, for example. I'm just spitballing on that, but surely there was a better way of integrating these talisman rewards into the rest of the roster while still having the best rewards or highest tier glowing stones or whatever drop from 9-star targets. That kind of builds on my previous idea with involving tier 1 and tier 2 monsters with determinate skills, and the weirdness involving HR caps could have also been reworked or avoided that way if that was the case, where perhaps only the highest tier of glowing stone is available at 9-star, but there are plenty of exciting options for talismans to go after and target farm at lower rarities until you unlock 9-star monsters as an option. Something that I will add in here as well is on the subject of frenzy monsters. What the hell happened there? Because a lot of folks were talking about, you know, that possibly being a great way to expand the endgame, and I definitely was under that same impression. Definitely a missed opportunity there. There could have been a way to have, you know, frenzy be affecting more monsters, to be able to get certain materials from those rewards, be able to like craft frenzy talismans or something, and then be able to like customize them or something. If there was a quest system there, you know, with guild quests, work the same way as frenzy monsters, level the quest up, get higher tier rewards, craft the initial talisman, and then raise the quest level up to like, you know, upgrade it or customize it or something. Like, there could have been a ton of ways that they involved the frenzy system more as part of this update. And that definitely is a shame, because frenzy monsters have been very underused with WoW so far. And like I said, you know, it seems like they've just been shoehorned in as some sort of like weird supporting thing or plot point thing for gore. Where in, you know, 4th gen, 4 and 4U, they were a massive part of the endgame within those games. So there could have been something there. Maybe there still will be something added at a later time with those, but I would have liked to have seen something involving Frenzy a bit more with this endgame update. So quite a few hypotheticals and ideas there from just a casual Monster Hunter endgame enjoyer there on this new system and what I would have liked to have seen. Though they have said that they will be making further changes and updates to the system over time. So we'll have to see what they have in store for us in that regard. Right, I think that's enough yapping from me on this one. Keep it nice and short and sweet. Not 2 hours long this time, so hope you guys have enjoyed listening. It's nice to be on camera again and test out some new gear and test out the new setup. I've moved place since the last time I was on camera, so apologies for the lack of uploads. That has been a big reason why. This has been good fun. I've enjoyed this. Definitely a lot more chill than grinding, working on a big long script and then sitting down and absolutely destroying my voice box for 2 hours recording something. So this has been cool. I don't know how many of these videos I will make, and it seems like there's always news and things happening with Wilds, so it seems a bit untenable to make a video on everything, but who knows? We'll have to see. It's been good fun. I do have a couple of ideas planned for some videos, and like I said, a couple of things in the pipeline, possibly involving some cool Monster Hunter talking heads as well, so we'll have to see how those pan out. Thanks again for any support on the channel. I've done a couple of live streams as well, and it's been great having some folks in there to just chill out and hang with as well, so appreciate you guys if you've stopped by the live stream. See if I can do a few more as well. Been dialing in a few things with the setup and improving things incrementally with pretty much everything that I'm doing for YouTube now, so that's been cool, and yeah, just wanted to say thank you to those folks as well. So yeah, until next time, I hope you guys enjoy the update, and you will see more from me again very soon. Until then, happy hunting, guys.